All right, good morning, Chair Postman, Member Garrett, staff and guests. The lobbies are open and the recording has begun.
Thank you, Dustin. Good morning, everybody. We'll convene the Liquor and Cannabis Board Caucus meeting for January 31st, 2023. Our first item is the season's first legislative update with Mark Webster, our Director of Legislative Relations. Morning, Mark.
Good morning, Chair Postman, Board Member Garrett, Mark Webster, the Legislative Director. It is somehow the fourth week of session already. It simultaneously feels like it's been about 45 minutes and also 6 months. That's the strange thing. Yeah, exactly. It does things to time. It's kind of odd. Just as a reminder, the very first cutoff comes on February 17th. That's the day that bills have to pass the policy committee. And then the fiscal cutoff where they have to pass the fiscal committees is about a week after that. And then we'll essentially start over in the other house. Our agency request bills have all been heard and are on the exec calendar today in the Senate. I don't know that they're all going to actually get exec'd out. I think there's still some work to be done on the THC bill. So yeah, I think we're going to see a number of amendments or proposed amendments there, and we'll try to work through those. Again, just trying to keep the focus where it should be on that overarching policy goal and trying to stay out of the kind of arcane chemistry arguments that come to the fore with that particular bill. The social equity bill, Senate Bill 5080, was heard first, and thus I think it's just had the most time for amendments and discussion. Senator Saldana, staff, and stakeholders have made some changes. We've seen a couple of drafts, but I think the bill is in a very good place right now. Criteria for the DIAs, or the disproportionately impacted areas, have been revised in the bill, as an example. And so it is scheduled for exec this morning, and we'll see if that one's ready to go. I should say that the work on the DIA maps has led to a slight change in the maps for the first round of social equity licensing, and that's, I think, something that Becky will be speaking to later in the agenda. Our subpoena authority bill, 5405, also had its initial hearing yesterday. Haven't heard of amendments on that except for one comma being added to remove some slight ambiguity in the underlying law. One of those great ambiguous commas. As I said, I think we're going to see a number of amendments proposed on the THC bill, with many, including the hemp industry, feeling that the milligram threshold for regulation by the LCB is too low, and many in the 502 industry feeling that it is too high. Chandra is testifying this afternoon on a bill that would clarify the ability of our enforcement officers to be trained at the state's law enforcement academy. And the bill just adds limited jurisdiction peace officers to the laws requiring training approved by the Criminal Justice Training Commission. Kind of a in the weeds bill, but something that's important to our Enforcement and Education Division. We've been supportive of bills this year aimed at improving the medical cannabis space, such as House Bill 1453, which removes the excise tax for registered medical patients. This can be like an incentive to get people registered, helping demonstrate demand for medical cannabis to incent producers in turn to produce more of it. Something I know that the board has been interested in, we've been opposed on a bill to make permanent the temporary allowances allowing for the delivery of alcohol from restaurants and bars, largely using third-party delivery services. We've been engaged with the prime sponsor in the House, with stakeholders, both pro and con, kind of working through some of the elements of the bill. And we've been working with the governor's office to urge caution on this policy, partly, I think, as a result, as you know, of the compliance rates that we observed during the time that temporary privileges have been active. And just as a reminder, they are set to sunset on July 1 of this year. There are a lot of cannabis bills this year, including 2 different proposals to change the excise tax, instituting a tiered tax based on potency, another attempt to create the Cannabis Commission, and a bill that would force local governments that have bans or moratoria on cannabis sales to put those policies on the ballot in order to keep them. That's what I've got for you thus far. We'll keep working on it, and I hope to be able to share more with you in the coming weeks.
Thanks, Mark. A couple quick questions. On 1453, the delivery, you mentioned the governor's office. The governor opposes the bill, supports the position that we've put forward, right? This is something that the administration has taken a lead on.
Yeah, this is House Bill 1375. 1453 is the medical cannabis one, but this is
Excise tax,
1375. Right.
Misread my notes. Thank you.
Yes. And the Senate version of that is being heard this week on Thursday, and we'll be there this time with the governor's office explaining that
That's
position.
great. And on the tax on high potency, is there like a public health and prevention version of that as well as an industry version of that?
Yeah, there are two different bills. One much more from the public health side. That one is sponsored by Representative Davis. The other one, lowers the excise tax on lower potency cannabis with a higher tax.
I know it's not our bag necessarily, but any chance that might coalesce into some consensus where both public health and prevention and the industry agree on a tax bill?
They're pretty far apart right now, but I suppose that, we do have time. It's a long session. That could happen. I think for something like that to happen, it might take more than one session. But that's a really interesting
it'd be
idea.
fascinating. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Ollie, any questions for Mark? One last one on the THC bill. And I know it is early in this, but given that we're sort of in the middle, so to speak, we got some people saying go to 0 and some people say go to 4.5 or whatever.
2.5 and 5, yeah.
Yeah. What do we think is going to be happening here? How are we going to be? Any chance that will be a sit down conversation with people about negotiating a bill?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been talking with Senator Robinson this morning about sitting down and talking about that very issue. Yeah. So I think that's exactly where a lot of those discussions are going to center. And I think we knew that even before session began.
Yeah.
Once you have a number out there. Yeah.
Yeah. We really need that bill. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Our next update is about our system modernization project. That's the big computer system known as SMP. And Deputy Director Tony Hood is here to give us an update. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Chair Postman, Member Garrett. I just have a short update about system modernization. On the weekend of February 10th through the 12th, our team will be transitioning us, our document storage and our access platform to Laserfish. They'll spend the whole weekend moving over the active data, and they will roll out the interim solution that will start February 13th, Monday, February 13th in the morning. And the reason I'm here today is to let you and members of the public know that applications may process a little slower as we transition into that interim process and as our staff learn the new technology and the workflow. The good news, our staff started training today. We do just-in-time training, so we intentionally started it now and will train for the next few weeks so that it's fresh in staff's mind on how to use the interim solution. And we will use this interim solution, as you know, until Salesforce is fully in place. And Salesforce is the bigger part of the system modernization project, and it will not be fully in place until April or May of 2024. So we need this interim solution for a little over a year while we continue to work with Salesforce. We're very confident that over the weekend we'll be able to move the data and transition. We had a great dry run last week. Big thank you to Glenda Schaefer, who ran the dry run. It's all very specific and set out and structured as to who does what and when you have authority to do what. So I was very happy to listen to part of that dry run. And then they will do the real thing starting February 10th after work. And if for some reason the transition doesn't go as we've planned, we have the option to roll back to the current status if we need to. And so we'll be in communication all weekend, and hopefully we won't have to discuss a rollback, but we could do that rollback. This is an important step in getting into our finally getting into the new modern system with Salesforce as the foundation of the solution. So if you have any questions, let me know, but I just wanted you and the public to know that we'll have that potential slight slowdown on February 13th.
Great. I sat in on the town hall meeting you had last week. I don't know, it seemed almost every single employee was on there. It was huge.
We had a great turnout. I was very happy to see. I saw 248 at one point, but I don't know if I saw the final number. But yes, 248.
So it's great. And I will say, people who are going to rely on this system and are the people you're going to be training and all that, which are not me necessarily. So a lot of it was over my head. I just wonder what the takeaway was of the team from the kind of questions you were getting. I mean, are people ready for this?
I think they are. I think that they are ready to do their training, which, like I said, started today. I think the town hall came at the right time, giving them that preview. And I thought the video was done well by Jody. And of course, people could go back and watch that video. That's just one of the many, many tools they have. So after they're trained this week and next week, if they want to go back and watch that again, it can help cement the process. And so I think the questions that we got in the chat that day were what we expected, and from the users.
Good.
So
yeah, it seems we're at this point where S&P largely has been this big thing, and it's about to get really personal, right?
Like it is.
It's going to be what people are doing at their desk, and we need we sort of go from the S&P team to everybody to try to get us over this next little hump here. So
yes, we do, and we'll have a lot of office hours available. Our training team will be available after the 13th. So that there'll be lots of time for people to come and say, I know I was trained, but I need a refresher, or I need more information on this specific tool. So we want to make sure that they feel comfortable knowing that they have lots of support for the 2 weeks after the 13th and of course thereafter.
Yeah, great. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay,
Holly?
Thank you very much.
Nothing. Okay, great. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
We will turn to our rules team, and I will have Kathy Hoffman, the Policy and Rules Manager, take us through a couple things. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett. Going to start with a brief rules update for February, since we're not having a board meeting tomorrow. So rules update for the month of February, and then we'll hand it over to Jeff to walk through the thematic analysis that was conducted with respect to the canopy rules work on the cannabis side. So beginning with the alcohol rules in progress, just want to let everybody know we're going to pause our work on private club membership drives for now. That was consistent with the rule petition that the board approved on September 14th. We're likely to resume that in mid to late summer because we want to prioritize the work around Class 13 alcohol server privilege review. And that was the position that we received last November that the board approved on January 4th. So Daniel will be moving that project along, hopes to bring a CR 101 to you around mid-March. That would put the CR 102 mid-June, gives a lot of time for stakeholder engagement there. And then that would probably bring final rule adoption somewhere early August. So looking forward to bringing that forward to the board within that time frame. And then moving on to cannabis. Just wanted to provide an update on cannabis canopy because we learned that there had been a delay in project timeline that required us to kind of recalibrate the timeline on this. So under the new timeline, we were hoping to bring on 102 to the board around May 18th. That'll allow enough time for stakeholder engagement. We hope to start that in early April. And that gives me an opportunity to speak briefly to what we're doing with regard to sort of retiring our old listen and learn model and recalibrating that as well, trying something new moving forward. So just wanted to remind folks that's the direction we're going with our listen and learn model. Anyway, under that timeline, we could potentially have a public hearing in mid-July and then final adoption early August. with this effective date sometime in September. And again, these dates are tentative. We're collaborating across the agency to provide guidance, create guidance or policy statement or something similar to allay any concern regarding the current growing season going into next year. So work continues on that, and Jeff will provide you with an update. Any questions on that before we move forward?
Just a quick comment on the canopy timeline, and I know you know this, but that's an issue obviously that the board's been focused on, and so at some point, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to hear soon from Jeff, but we'll probably have to bring you guys back at some point between now and you know, late spring, and have a bigger conversation about all of that, you know, the timing and what you're thinking, because I think all three board members have an interest in that.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and it's very important to our stakeholders.
Yeah, and I guess that's why we heard about it like we did, and
yes, it is.
And it is. Like I said, I'm looking forward to the conversation, but it's also just fascinating kind of conundrum in a way. So
it is.
Yeah, so we'll find some time for a longer conversation, I think, when all board members are here to talk about that path that you were just laying out.
Sounds great.
Good, thank you.
Okay, Board Member Garrett, anything else? Okay, so moving on to cannabis product sampling. Hope to bring the CR 101 to the board March 1st. And that was the petition that the board approved on August 31st. So this is one of that collection of petitions that we received over the summer in high volume. Going to start moving that forward, and then hopefully under that timeline, we may have a CR 102 ready to go by mid-May, assuming there's enough time for stakeholder engagement within that time frame, and then potentially a CR 103 by early August. And again, timelines are tentative given the amount of stakeholder engagement that's required for each project, and each project is different, I would say. With respect to cannabis advertising, of course, Cassidy's taken that project over. She's getting ready to sort of reconvene the internal project work group. And under the timeline that she's revised, she hopes to bring 102 to the board in mid-July. So she's anticipating a great deal of stakeholder engagement there. And then a 103 by the end of October. So lots of work happening there, and we're looking forward to moving that project forward. And then she's also going to be bringing the 101 to the board concerning minors under 16 on production premises and minors over 16, but under 21 assisting contractors on those same premises. So combining that into a single CR 101, and that again is part of that collection of rule petitions we received in July that the board approved in late August. Her timeline for this is bringing the 101 to you late March. I think there's a lot of complexity with this particular issue. I think everyone's aware of some of the controversy around allowing minors on cannabis premises. But under that timeline, hoping to bring 102 to you mid-August, and that would have final rules somewhere around the early part of November. And then finally, want to talk briefly about the cloud storage option project. Of course, you approved the CR 101 at the last board meeting. Daniel shared the timeline, but just to reiterate, hoping to bring a CR 102 to you by mid-May, with finalization sometime around mid-July. So that concludes this presentation and update. Any questions you can answer?
Just one general one, question, concern, whatever. But so we're talking about all these timelines, but we also have this legislative session that could dump a bunch more work on your team, right?
That's right.
Do you build that into your schedule?
Yes.
That possibility? Okay.
We do, and I think that's one of the things we really underscore, that these timelines are tentative. And there could be legislation that says we have to have rules done by a date certain. We don't receive legislation like that very often. But yeah, sometimes that happens. Other times we're able to, in some instances, withdraw 101 because it is substantially similar to legislation that we might need to be implementing, and then, refile and combine so that we can sort of hold the work together moving forward. And then some projects we just have to put on pause if we've got rules that we absolutely need to get moved forward immediately. And that was the case with 1480, the temporary alcohol allowances. Audrey had to put a few things on hold to make sure that we implemented timely.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a minute. Even 2 of our 3 bills, if we were to get those 2 bills, THC and social equity, that would be a
significant
to-do list, right?
Yeah. Right. Those would absolutely float to the top of our priority list.
Okay. All right.
And Kathy, are you now fully staffed?
We are, yes.
Okay. Okay.
We are.
You need more? We'll talk about.
I would not object to that.
Well, just let us know when all that does land and if there's anything that the board can do to help triage anything or of this sort. So appreciate all those efforts.
All right. Thanks very much. And handing it over to Jeff.
Great. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett. In the late summer of 2022, the board approved a CR 101 pre-proposal statement of inquiry to consider possible amendments to the rules establishing the cannabis canopy limits set by the tier system in WAC 314-55-075, and to also evaluate the current definition of plant canopy that is contained in the agency's WAC. WAC 314-55-075 was adopted in 2013 with the implementation of Initiative 502, and it outlines the privileges, requirements, and fees for cannabis producer licensees, including guidelines for the maximum area that a producer licensee may dedicate to cannabis production. The area of the producer licensee's premises dedicated to live plant production is recognized as plant canopy and includes the area dedicated to live plant production, including maintaining mother plants, propagating plants from seed to plant tissue, cloning, and vegetative and flowering growing areas. Cannabis producers are limited by their license tier level in WAC 314-55-075 to the amount of square footage, either indoor floor space, greenhouse space, or outdoor area that they can dedicate to cannabis plant production. And I'm guessing you are familiar with the tier system and the space requirements in the tier system. Cannabis producers utilize a wide range of techniques and configurations in plant cultivation and bring their cannabis harvests typically once or twice a year when producing outdoors, or as often as 5 times per year in intensively managed indoor grows. Producer licensees sell harvested cannabis to other producers, or if the producer is also a licensed processor, they may process the cannabis into intermediate or end products for sale to licensed retail stores. To better understand licensee and other stakeholder concerns related to the measurement of plant canopy and the application of the current rule, to develop themes that might inform rule development and to explore whether there might be broader policy considerations, the rules team hosted 2 World Cafe virtual stakeholder sessions. In following the World Cafe model, we posed 3 questions in each World Cafe meeting. In the first World Cafe, we asked, how should we treat floor space that is not in production? How could we update the tier system? And how should we measure canopy? And in the second World Cafe, we asked 3 different questions. Would producers benefit from more flexibility in how they use cannabis growing area? Should the tier levels be modernized to follow maximum yield limits instead of a measured canopy area? And the third, would following annual annual yield limits be a better way to regulate cannabis production? In the World Cafe forums, the participants divided into small groups to consider these questions and then reconvened with the large group to harvest ideas gathered from the small group discussions. The results of the idea harvest are preserved in a thematic analysis document to memorialize the ideas recorded from the session transcripts. The thematic analysis I'm sharing with you today provides an overview of harvested ideas, what those ideas might imply for current rule, and potential conceptual rule revisions, options, or other solutions for consideration and discussion. So several broad themes regarding cannabis canopy emerged and were discussed in the World Cafe sessions. While not all the participants contributed to all discussions, the participants expressed a consistent belief that floor space not dedicated directly to plant production should not be counted in canopy measurements. There was some desire to consider how cannabis grows could incorporate larger spatial footprints to grant the producer flexibility for larger indoor spaces or outdoor fallow fields that are cultivated with cover crops to improve the soil fertility. Participants roundly expressed the view that the rules regarding canopy are only as good as the enforcement, and consistent application of existing measurement protocols is necessary to make sure that any producers at or approaching the spatial limits of their tier levels do not exceed the tier limits. There were suggestions for measuring canopy, including using drones with software to measure canopy area, as is used in various forestry applications, or to use a volumetric measure to take into consideration not only the area, but also the relative size of the cannabis plants. There was an idea to make sure that canopy measurements are simple and can be easily followed by both the licensee and the LCB team members. It was pointed out by one of the participants that all of the floor plans that are sent to licensing and approved are in most cases produced by the licensee themselves. There was an idea also to consider limiting production by allowing a predetermined plant count to have plant tags that are equipped with a radio frequency identification chip known as an RFID chip that could identify the plant and could produce a quick count of plants that are in a grow. Some other themes emerged around updating the tier system itself, which considered changes to the tier levels. These conceptual revisions would require significant redesign of the existing tier system. Various ideas for distinguishing tiers with indoor and outdoor canopy limits, expanding canopy limits for certain producer types, and permitting producers to change tiers or go to a dormant tier level were ideas that were brought forth. Regarding the idea of limiting production by weight instead of the size of canopy was an idea that was endorsed by some participants, but many of the others also expressed concern that regulating production by yield would not help to balance out market oversupply and could actually stimulate overproduction or create an increased risk of product diversion, or it could harm growers who are otherwise following the letter of the regulation, but are prolific or experience an above average harvest. It could potentially have them reach or exceed any kind of a weight limit that would be calibrated to their operation. Along with the concerns about oversupply, another consideration was recognized in the World Cafe sessions. Cannabis producers recognize the possibility of federal cannabis rescheduling and the potential for new markets if interstate commerce in cannabis becomes possible as part of federal legalization. There was agreement in discussing this that we should be looking towards this federal legalization, and that we should do what we can to allow the tier systems to ramp up so that producers will not be left behind the curve when and if the national interstate commerce occurs. And in that scenario, perhaps a yield limit could be a good possibility for regulating production in the industry. So in analyzing the ideas generated by these discussions, we're considering potential rule revisions or solutions, such as expanding and refining the current definition of canopy in WAC 314.55.010. Other possible rule revisions regarding the extra space in licensed grow premises. Possible revisions describing the difference between indoor, outdoor, and multi-level indoor growing, and possible rule changes addressing outdoor canopy measurement. And finally, the changes to the tier system itself, which we have mentioned, would invite consideration of some broader issues than just the issue of how to measure and limit production. So this concludes my comments today, summarizing major themes in the sessions. I sent out a copy of the thematic analysis to you earlier this morning, so that you would have that available to you. And this concludes my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about canopy.
Thank you. So I only briefly looked through the document, and it's hard to, in my first read, find anything that doesn't also have sort of a negative attached to it, right? There's there's some talk about yield, but none of these concerns, or weight, but then if you're fast freezing, like it's so much give and take on all of this. And I guess I said that only to say, good luck. It's hard to figure out what that path is. I do think that one of the strong themes that comes through, as you've mentioned, is the interplay of possible federal legalization. And I would just say, I don't know how much we should put that into our thinking. Obviously, we can all talk about it and figure it out. Only because I just don't see it happening very soon. And I think we need a really workable, understandable program here that can be enforced equitably across the state. I just don't want us to either wait or have too many sort of triggers. I mean, if legalization comes, we could have some trigger in there or something, but we're not ready. I'm not ready, one board member, I'm not ready to dispose of a way to measure production and whether it's canopy or the same, So anyhow, like I said, to Kathy, it's fascinating, but it's difficult to try to figure out what is the right way to do it. And for us, for the LCB, right has to mean uniformly enforced. And maybe it's uniformly for outdoor and uniformly for indoor, but I've had licensees talk to me about double-decker growing indoors. What do you do then? Is that an unfair advantage? And all of those things. So I don't know. It's interesting. I guess that's all I say is, good luck.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chair Postman.
Yeah. Ollie, anything to add?
No, you covered it. Good luck.
Yeah. What is the next step, Jeff? When will we see something next?
Well, we are reconvening the rule team to start working on possible changes and considering some rule language. So within the next couple of weeks, that will be underway, and I'll provide updates along the way as we do that. If we go in the direction of having any rule amendments, then we'll of course have the stakeholder work and stuff occurring too. So we will keep you in close contact about the progress here.
Okay. And then the only thing I thought of is, we did send a notice to licensees last year when we started this process, sort of putting some things on hold. And so I just wonder if there's anything we need to do between now and when people are growing again or something, if this delay needs us to restate current policy or whatever that would be. We should think about that too and make sure that people out there who are growing understand what the status quo is and how long that status quo is likely to stay in place. So for future conversation.
Certainly, we will do that. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you for the update. Very interesting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up is Rick Garza, agency director, of course, for agency update. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Chair Postman, Board Member Garrett. I was out of the office last week on vacation, so I'm trying to catch up with email. Don't really have anything to report at this moment, but I know we'll be meeting next week, but available for any questions you might have.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're catching up, so we'll give you time, but I'm sure it's interesting. Today we were talking about all the things that are top of mind, social equity and canopy in particular, and our legislative agenda. So, let us know anything I just say let's err on the side of more conversations and more briefings like this today. And so just let us know if any of those things need our time, Rick, and we'll make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Do want to commend Mark and the work that the staff and in fact our board members are involved in many of the bills that we're involved in. And they seem to be moving forward, as Mark said. And we've got a long session, and I'm sure there'll be more challenges and more issues. I know the DIA maps created some concern, but I think, staff, Ollie and Becky and others were able to meet with members to help them understand the changes that can be made and need to be made in order to make sure that that works the way that we want it to work. So appreciate all the work of staff. And as Mark's shared, Chandra is testifying on a bill this afternoon. But I think we're about where we need to be. Mark suggested we haven't seen any hesitation to move our stuff forward, maybe to better clarify. But it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Chair Postman, you shared the THC bill. We had that whole dilemma when we brought the bill forward as proposed legislation. Some saying it's too high, some saying it's too low. And here it is in front of us again with the same arguments. And so, hopefully and you asked the right question. At some point, all those parties will need to come to some agreement in order to make that legislation move forward, which of course we hope does. And I think you're right. We're right there in the middle of that, of those who think it's too much or too little. So hopefully that bill will move forward.
Yeah.
And that's all I'd have to share today. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate that. Let's get to social equity then. And Becky Smith, the licensing regulation director, and Caitlin Bomba, the senior policy and education manager for licensing, are here for an update. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett. I first want to start with thanking you for providing us some time on the caucus calendar to give you some updates on social equity. I do want to start with our webinars because they ended this weekend. We had our last webinar on Saturday evening, and I will tell you about 800 people viewed the link and about 500 people registered. And they had some really good conversation. A number of people watched the whole video, that interacted with our staff and our vendors. And that really means that the video wasn't too long. So the training wasn't too long, which is also a really good indicator. That we also could see that people are clicking onto the links. And again, that also, really will help them in going through the application process in March. And then that right away, as we were providing training, we were able to have folks give us a score on how they thought the training went, and mostly 4 out of 5s or 5 out of 5s. Again, that it's good feedback to receive, that the feedback was mostly positive. So I think we're in a good place with the application process and training folks. And people have about a month to start to collect the documents that they're going to need in order to apply on March 1st. So I just wanted to share that first. And then I also want to give an update about our DIA maps. As you know, that we released our DIA maps about 2 to 3 weeks ago. Right away, we heard from community that they had some concerns, that the map was, it was to take a look at the community members that were most likely impacted by the war on drugs. And that was at 20%. So when we were looking at the DAAs and the census tracks, they were in the we looked at what was in the top 20%. So 20% of high poverty rate, 20% of the rate of participation in income-based federal programs, 20% rate of unemployment, and 20% of the high rate of conviction. And so that's how we mapped the first time. But with all the feedback we received, there wasn't much that we could change, but we could change the percentage. So we can't change any of the 4 indicators. I want to make that clear that was required by legislation. And RCW 6950-335 requires that we use those indicators, but we could change the percentage. So at 30%, it's still considered to be a high rate. And so we worked with our vendor and with our maps in order to take a look at those changes and see what that would do as far as including more areas that were mostly impacted by the war on drugs. And so I asked Caitlin to join me this morning to share the maps. And we're hoping to see the maps be able to be uploaded by the end of the week. Again, we want to make sure that everything is correct before we update the maps. And so this is a preliminary view of the map. Caitlin?
Can I just ask one clarifying question before you do that, Caitlin? I think I got this, but I just want to make sure it's clear. So when we talk about changing from 20% to 30%, when we started this, what we said was the ones that qualify as a DAA are the really the highest poverty rates. It's the top 20% of the, I mean, it's weird to say highest poverty, but you know what I mean? The biggest, the lowest income areas, were the most economically distressed areas. And now what we're doing is we're growing that from 20% to 30% to capture areas that are theoretically less economically distressed than our first batch, but expands that into other areas that are distressed income areas. Do I have right?
You have that right.
Okay, thank you. And I just, I can't stop editing, Becky, and I apologize for that. But on our website, where you go to the DIA map, we should just put a little paragraph there that says what these are based on. Like, these maps show this, and it's the top 30% of these.
We can do that.
Sorry to edit online here, but I was just going to the map as we were talking, and I was looking at it this morning, and it's like, let's just define what that is there. So anyhow, sorry to interrupt.
And we're hoping to have a different look at the maps, and that
Okay.
Everybody keeps talking about this flat map. So we're going to see about being able to provide a flat map.
What's that?
And that's what you're seeing here. So not putting any addresses in, not putting your address in, but being able just to take a look to see what qualifies. And then you'll have to put your address in as well, because it won't just be good enough just to look at the map, but we want to be able to provide that view. It's something that, we did get feedback from Senator Saldana's and others that they would like to see this map just viewed in a couple of different ways. So we're able to accomplish that. And again, looking at doing that by the end of the week.
Great. Okay. Good.
So hopefully you all can see my screen here.
Yes.
Okay. So this map, as Becky mentioned, represents the entire state. And so what I have here is in the reddish purple, I would say those are in the top 20%, and then the blue would be those that would be in the top 30%. So the blue are the new areas being added on. And the map, I can display the information. So this is what it looks like as a state for the 1980s. And then I'm just going to go through and add on the 1990s. And you can see more areas will pop up on the screen. And then we can go 2000 and see where 2010 adds in. And then I can zone in so you can see a little bit better. So let's zone in into like Seattle, Tacoma area. So we can look here at for 1980, what it looks like. 1990, 2000, and then 2010.
Do you know on a, I don't know if you do it as a census tract or whatever, like, how many places are being added by going from 20 to 30? If you could do it by census tract, do we know that? Like before it was this many thousand and now it's this many thousand or hundreds?
Yes. So across the state for the 80s, there was for top 20 it'd be 72 tracks, but in the top 30 it's 134.
Wow, okay. So it's a significant change.
It is.
It also seems to me that we, as time moves on, have more areas of economically distressed places in our state. Just as a side note. And when you go from 20 to 30, have you had a chance to look, does that get spread around fairly evenly geographically? So it just sort of goes with the...
Yes. You'll see the bigger census tracts. Census tracts are based off population, so those look really big, but the population is much smaller in those areas.
Yeah, interesting. And the bulk of the number of people obviously would be on the west side in the urban areas because those census tracts are going to just have a lot more people living in them. Is that a fair assumption?
On the west side?
The number of people who would be eligible based on this map, just as everything in the state, more is on the west. So there's going to be more people in the urban areas, the denser populated areas that might qualify as living in a DIA, even though the number, Becky, go ahead.
So not necessarily so.
Okay.
So remember our rural communities are the ones that you'll see that were, that really did hit all of the top 4 indicators. So when it comes to poverty, when it comes to unemployment, that those you'll see in our, that sort of in our reservations, for instance, in the tribal areas. You'll also see that in like Grace Harbor County, again, so not necessarily in our urban areas.
Okay.
We did see an increase in our urban areas though. So Pierce County, Tacoma, the Renton, for instance,
South Seattle.
South Seattle. But not certainly not as large as we're seeing in some of our rural areas.
I see. Okay, good to know. Thank you.
And that's all of our updates we have, unless you have more questions, Board Member Garrett.
Do you think and I don't know if we can get it scheduled with the, was it Dr. William yesterday?
Yes.
Yes, with Dr. William, that it would benefit having him explain, because his portion wasn't long, to maybe at an EMT so that all of the directors kind of get, because I was listening to the questions that David was asking, that maybe him explaining all of this to everyone, because everybody's going to be approached by somebody as to how we came to this, that they can kind of fully understand, what he did. I don't know what's his availability is like, but is this something and David, if that's what you want, that can come to an EMT or something?
or Caucus. I think
or a caucus, whatever,
one
whichever.
of your updates, Becky, we could have some of him join you if that's, we can talk about that and see. Are we going to still go ahead and we talked about this last week for the census tracts show, you know, the 4 different factors for each? Is that going to be available to?
I believe he's working on that as well.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I think that'll help a lot too.
Okay.
And it's, yeah. But I think we should definitely think about that too. And you know, Becky will rely on you to let us know. But again, we're ready and available for any kind of conversation about that to help spread the word on this.
That's great. And we'll see something coming out from communications as well on our DIA maps again later on this week when the maps are ready to be rolled out. And so we want people to hear about it. We want folks to know to go back and take another look at the DIA maps, you know, that to make sure that they, you know, that they, if they didn't qualify before, they might qualify now. Certainly no guarantees, but we want them to take another look at the map.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we all need to just get that word out as much as we can. So appreciate that. Thank you both for this presentation. Yeah, Ollie, go ahead.
Becky, are you on the training video that you did last week? Is that it, or are there going to be any others?
That's it. That's it.
That's it on that part.
Yep,
Okay.
That's it. That folks that are interested in going back and viewing the training, they'll be able to continue to do that. So they'll be able to
Okay,
go
so they
in.
can always go back and view it.
Yes, absolutely. Click
And
through
they
the
can always
links.
submit questions, right?
Yes, always can submit questions and we'll answer them back, or, you know, even have other folks respond to them as well if they have questions about, does this document, you know, meet the requirements, that we can certainly have the third-party vendor start to answer those questions.
Okay. And you do have an article in the Seattle Medium this week. It was delivered yesterday, so I saw it coming from the show you did last week.
Well, hopefully I was worked out well.
I'm sure it did. Okay. Again, I appreciate the presentation today, but really the work that's gone on every day since you guys started this, but just in the last week or so, I think licensing has just once again gone above and beyond to try to listen to people, talk to legislators, board members, and others to figure out what the best path forward is. And it just shows that you're problem solvers, and the board really appreciates that. So thank you both, and thank your team for us on that work.
We'll definitely do that. And thank you. Thank you for all your support.
Yeah.
Have a good afternoon.
You too. Thank you both. Okay, and that brings us to our last item, which is board member and executive assistant reports, if any. Dustin?
If I can, just real quick, big shout out to our IT team.
Yes.
And helping on the last week or so, getting our AV vendors in here to secure the technology woes that we've been having for the last few weeks. So we had a successful meeting today, and so thank you guys very much.
Yeah, we'll second that. Ian Sloan from IT has been sitting here with us today. It's you know, good to see leadership rolling up their sleeves, and it's helped a lot, because you'll see we didn't have any echoes today. You can see us, we can hear us, we can hear you all, so it was great. Ollie, anything to add today?
No, as I just stated with Becky, she did a radio show last week with the Medium, and there's an article in the Medium newspaper, which is a newspaper that goes out to the minority community, Central District area, and on here locally. I did I think it was called Heartbeat Radio, Convergent Radio last week. This Thursday, I'm going to be on Urban Forum Northwest Radio, updating people and telling folks about the upcoming date. But just we're doing everything to make sure we are letting people in the getting the word out on that when the licenses are going to be open.
Good.
And that we're making sure we get it spread it throughout the various communities.
Yeah, excellent. And, you know, as Becky was just saying, now we just want to make sure everyone knows the maps have been updated. So if you went there,
Yes.
before today and you didn't find yourself, try it again.
Exactly.
You know, there's time still before applications open on March 1st to get all that work done and look at the webinars and things. So yeah, good. Well, I'm glad you're out there talking to folks about it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go find that story and see what they say. Okay, great. With that, we will adjourn the caucus for the January 31st. No board meeting tomorrow. And so the next board meeting will be 2 weeks Wednesday. So with that, everybody have a great day and we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.